This is the Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell, on Alternative Talk, AM 1150. Now, back to the show with local mortgage and finance expert, Tina Mitchell.
Welcome back to the Money Hour with your host and mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell, right here on 1150 AM KKNW, the Saturday, February 21st show. My goal is to keep you up to date on the latest news and trends in our local economy. Keep me tuned in, and I will keep you informed. If you're hearing my show at a different time or day, you're listening to a rebroadcast, you can call the show at 1-855-400-1150. Again, that's 1-855-400-1150 or online at themoneyhour.com. And in studio right now, I have Sally Fox with Engaging Presence. Sally, thank you so much for joining me in studio. I'm very excited to have a conversation with you and share it with my listeners.
I am delighted to be here, Tina.
And a little background about Sally. Dr. Sally Fox helps professionals and their organization create great stories that help them connect with their customers and stand out in an information-glutted world. She guides her clients to identify their strengths and their uniqueness and connect their stories to what their customers need. With an MBA and a Ph.D. in leadership and 25 years consulting experience, Sally guided hundreds of professionals and organizations to engage with their customers and present their message in ways that stand out. And I think it's so important, Sally, what you're doing. And I told you before we started the show how excited I was to talk about you, because I don't think that there's enough importance put on how important this is to be able to tell your story, and not to be able to tell your story just for your clients, but tell your story so you can have passion in what you're doing.
That's right. People feel it.
Yes.
And somebody who has authentic passion for their story, if their story also connects with what the customer wants, is unstoppable, because people feel that. It's not just the words, it's the energy that people feel behind it.
And you're not talking about the Little Red Riding Hood story here, right? Explain to my listeners what you mean by story.
Well, I think there's a place in life, and those of us who've had kids and have told stories to our kids, there's a lot of room for fables and fairy tales. But in business, the big distinction is you always want your story to connect to your customer.
Yes.
And that's why it's so important, because I say that we're in the connection economy. People, your audience, your customers, they want to connect with you. And story is a great vehicle to be able to do that.
And I think as a professional, knowing your story and your why behind that is important. So sometimes I think when you're going from a direction to be able to share your story with your clients and your employees and your workforce, you're also getting an opportunity to really find out the truth behind what you're doing.
That's right. Really working on your story is a little bit like strategic planning. The more you do, the more you actually discover about how much you have to contribute. So it's actually a great tool to uncover the kind of resource that you have that you might not even have thought of. So,
Sally, what is that story doing to enable each individually to stand out?
Well, first of all, the story is linking your personal work to a larger story about what's evolving in the marketplace. The mortgage industry and the real estate industry have been through so many changes in the past 10 years. And so if you can come in and say, I understand, here's the possibility that we see in the industry, and here is the obstacle, and now I'm here with a background and experience, a story that matches it, to really take you somewhere. Then people can feel, oh, okay, here's a person that I can begin to trust because her story is authentic and compelling and really makes it real. It lets her customer know that this is the person who can really do the work for her.
Makes total sense, Sally. And what about the customer? How do we link our stories to the customer's stories?
Now, that's a great question because, in a sense, we have multiple stories going on. We have our own personal story of how we got into the business and our own unique edge in the business.
Okay.
We have the industry story about what's changing, how the market's opening up, where the opportunities are. And then we have the customer story. So I bet many real estate agents and financial planning specialists know that they need to get into the heart of what the customer really wants.
Yes.
And to do that, you can ask great questions. They begin to open up, what's the story over here? not just, I want a great house at a low price in a good neighborhood, but what's the heart and soul of what's behind this? What is it they're really asking for? And what's the story that has gotten them to where they are today? All of that is amazingly important data when you're really wanting to make that kind of connection with your customer.
And that's so true, Sally, and especially in real estate, because home ownership is such there is an important why behind somebody getting a home, and really opening that up and having that conversation to get to their story actually is going to help them to make the decisions on what they really need in a house and what they don't, which is important, especially in this market with the lack of inventory. So it goes on such a deep level, but at the same time, it's just the basic of getting what they want out of this investment and understanding the reason behind it.
Absolutely. And I can remember when I bought my first house, I think it was 27 years ago. I had just split up with my partner, and we had been looking for a house together, and then I just knew it wasn't going to work. So I went out on my own, and I said, I'm going to find a little house that I can afford in Seattle. Now, my real estate agent at the time, she knew my backstory. She understood a little of what I went through. She understood the frustration of looking for a house with this guy who looked like he'd be great, but then it turned out to not be the one. And here I was taking the big risk of standing on my own and putting my own down payment into this investment. She knew that. She got it. She held me. And then we went out and we did all the things of checking out multiple houses and getting a full sense of what it was I was looking for. But I tell you, I wouldn't have stuck with her in the same way if I didn't feel so totally gotten.
Yes.
She really understood my backstory.
Makes total sense. Now, Sally, a lot of professionals, and especially people I'm sure that you work with, are very successful, and they have some pretty big stories. So how do they share their stories with their clients without sounding like they're bragging?
That is such a great question, because when all you have to share is the story about how you've made so much money and done such great work for your clients, and everything sounds like it's just worked out fine, it's an impressive story, but it doesn't connect with the heart of your customer. Because, your customer wants to feel you're human, you're real, you can relate to them. So being able to share a little bit of where you come from and what were the obstacles that you had to overcome, or what were those pivotal moments that really strengthened your commitment to serve them. I mean, you can take things that perhaps were a little bit difficult in your life and then show that they all link together to support the service that you're going to offer. That's a lot more compelling than just saying, look at my Mercedes, look at my income, look at how well dressed I am, I've got it all together. Well, that's great, but some of your audience just isn't going to relate to that without feeling your heart.
Yeah, and Sally, I have to ask you something, personal. If you go to my website, you'll see my personal core values, which are around my actual quotes that I wrote, and that's as much as I give on a level to my clients, because there's not enough time, and I'm really focused on what we need to do in their loan program and education, and it's really all about options, and I don't have that time in connecting. So how do you share your story without when you don't have the time, because your time is getting spent in really what they're there to talk with you about? How do you blend that into?
Well, first of all, you're not going to, in your case, you're not going to lead with your personal story, because you want to get right there, down to work. You have limited time, and you really honor your customer's time.
Exactly.
However, there are those little moments that come in between that you can use to give that sense of, I'm with you, I understand, I have something similar. So that you can weave it in without taking away from the important work that you're doing to, quote, tell a story.
Got it.
And the other thing is, Tina, look, you're doing this radio show. That is tremendous contribution to the community. So when people see that, they already know, there's something a little different about this Tina Mitchell, because she's making a huge commitment to supporting other people's financial well-being and their wealth. She's not just taking it all in for herself.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that was behind your story, but certainly that comes through.
Sure.
In the kind of service you're giving to the community.
Well, thank you, Sally. So, story and brand. Can you explain to my listeners the difference between your story and your brand?
For me, the story comes first. It's kind of like the pre-brand.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I do with people is I work with them so they really understand, okay, what's my core strength? Where do I see my industry going?
Mm-hmm.
How does my story relate to that? And then you have that, and you can take it out to someone who's going to do your branding and marketing.
Okay.
Say, I want to make sure that everything I do, that my look, that my communications, that my social media strategy, I want them to all reinforce who I am and how I'm here to serve. Now, some of the great branding people will take you through that story.
Mm-hmm.
And yet with some, it takes a little bit of time to really pull out what is the most important piece of the story.
Sure.
And how to make it coherent so it's not all over the map.
So you mentioned social media, Sally. How do you connect social media with your story? I mean, I know there's a lot of ways, and that's probably kind of a sensitive area as well, because you don't want to connect too much on your personal side and your story in the social media when it's business. But how do these two come together? How do you take advantage of social media?
That's a great question. And it's a good question for all of us, because sometimes so much is smattered out there on Facebook.
Yes.
You kind of go, well, who is this person really? But I think for a professional to be able to say, I can use social media to give a human face to what I'm doing. However, I still want to always relate it back to what am I here to do?
Yes.
And what's really going to benefit my customers? So they may not need to know about that late night party I went to.
Mm-hmm.
And if I went to Burning Man, maybe I keep it off the books because I want people to understand the parts of my story that really reinforce how I'm going to help them. So if we're professionals who are going to be checked out on social media, I think it's really important to be personal.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's great to share little bits that will humanize. Like I'm working with this organization called Get Storied. I'm part of their team, and it's a wonderful place. And at Get Storied, the leader there is always sharing about his love of chocolate. Everybody knows him, knows he's a chocolate-aholic.
Yeah,
it's a really small thing, and it doesn't detract from what he's bringing to the market, but it gives a face to who he is.
That makes so much sense. And if I have listeners, I have a lot of the Money Hour really is about bringing the best of the best in all areas regarding financing to share with consumers on everything that they need to know, because there's so many different arenas in our money, and you really can be an expert, I believe, at one thing: an expert realtor, expert mortgage, expert credit expert as you, in helping people tell their story and bringing it all into business. So how does, if I have a professional that's listening today, how do they get more information?
Well, they can go to my website, which is www.engagingpresence.com. There they'll see my phone number, and they can call up, and I could do a free introductory consultation just to find out where they're at. Because what it sounds like much of your audience needs is real clarity, like how to have the most compelling case in the shortest amount of time that really speaks to the heart of what they do and connects them with customers.
Yes.
And that's the work that we can do together. And then, of course, that can be rolled into branding and marketing and lots of other applications.
So, Sally, if you had one tip, something that's most important to do right now and is easy just to get a start in this, what would that be? An exercise or anything that you can think of?
Well, I would think about two things at the same time, and then I would link them together.
Okay.
I would think, what is it that is my irrefutable, undeniable strength that I know that I'm bringing, that is my unique contribution to this industry? And then I would say, how do I link that to what I know will benefit my customers?
Got it.
Make it a clear song.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Sally. It was a pleasure talking with you, and I appreciate so much you sharing your information and your expertise with my listeners. And I know it'll be a great podcast. So if you're listening and you missed Sally's segment, just go to themoneyhour.com, and after the show, you'll see it online. And Sally, again, thank you so much for taking time with me. I so much appreciate it.
Thank you, Tina. It was a delight.
And this is your host and mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell, signing off for the day. Enjoy your Saturday and the rest of the weekend. Thanks for being here to talk money with me. And I will be here next Saturday, same time, same place, right here on 1150 AM KKNW.